Hello and welcome back. This is Austin, aka AK, coming at you from the MTG Homebrew Network, and we have another deck for you. And this time, you really are barking up the wrong tree here, because it's another Yoshi Maru deck, because we love the dog. Look at him. He's the goodest boy, and he's got a birdie bestie right now. And that birdie bestie gives both of them Ward 3. Well, it's not really Ward. It just says they can't be they can't be the target of spells that are cast. So it's not the same as Ward, which affects abilities. But for all the parts that matter of protecting our dog, it's awesome. And the other fun part about Esior is you can just pivot to putting counters and equipment on the bird instead of just pumping the dog. So it gives you a little bit of evasion on top of protection. Now, this deck is super fun in that we get to run some dope-ass planeswalkers as well as some really, really strong legendary blue and white creatures. So let's begin with the planeswalkers. We're starting with Ajani, Caller of the Pride. Now, Ajani is great because he gives +1/+1 counters on up to one target creature, and then his other ability is Flying and Double Strike, which is just a straight up game ender if you get Yoshi to like 5, because by the time you have Yoshi at 5, they're probably ready to die. And we are also on Kato, Cunning Infiltrator, who gives us benefits for being aggressive and just throwing our dog and Esior at people. And the majority of this deck is below 2 mana, and the majority of our creatures in particular are in the 1 mana slot. So it really does help us just to plow through in the very, very early game, on top of the fact that he can make a body and also can give us unblockable. Now, the fun part, in my opinion, is the creature package of this deck. We're on a lot of evasion, we're on a lot of protection, and we're on a lot of bolstering. So we're on Hope of Girper, Flying, also able to silence them on their next turn, or pseudo-silence on their next turn. K9 gives another ward, also gives unblockable, triggers Yoshi, of course. Kythian, which gives us a Gideon Planeswalker on top of just being another legendary creature. Fun fact, learned this the other day when I was playing a game with Kythian. He exiles himself and comes back because he's a Planeswalker creature. So it's a double trigger on Yoshi if you can drop him, give him haste, and then flip him in the same turn. We're on Mikaeus, Skrelv for defense, Zach for also bolstering and defending. Fun one here is Kelith, because both of our commanders will be swinging. I have taken people out with Esior a couple of times using Kelith. And then we also have Owaka, the Traveling Merchant. Owaka is essentially our main draw card engine in this deck, and she is really, really good at keeping us on tempo, as if we're playing lands and legendary permanents as we ought to be, then we should be able to remove a counter at least one per turn and still be growing our Yoshimaru, or just replaying other cards that are really good for our strategy. We have Pippin, who is a legendary creature, Vigilance Ward, and says another target creature you control gains protection. And Sarah gives us the ability to investigate once per turn. And then on our top end, we have Geist of St. Traft. And if you aren't familiar with this guy, he's a bit of a doozy. It's a 3-mana 2/2 Spirit Cleric with Hexproof that creates a 4/4 Angel, tapped and attacking every time it attacks. The Angel does not stick around. It is exiled at the end of combat, but I'm just gonna say swinging for 6 and 4 of its flying is not a good time. Now, the rest of the deck is essentially here to prevent our opponents from messing with our Yoshi and our Esior, on top of removing obstacles for our Yoshi, because Yoshi doesn't have keywords, so thus you gotta clear a path for your dog to walk, you know? And one of my favorite ones in particular for this deck is Serum Snare. A return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand if that permanent had a mana value of 3 or less proliferate. So that pretty much gets rid of anybody's commander and grows Yoshi and lets you swing in for probably lethal depending on what's going on. And then I would also like to touch on our artifact package. Our artifact package is extremely brutal, I gotta say. We're on Lost Jite, which gives us a couple of options on top of giving more +1/+1 counters. We have Shadow Spear, which is Trample and Lifelink. We are on the Ozolith to be able to maintain all of the counters that we keep accumulating. We have Idol of Endurance, which gives us Grave Return for the late game. We have Wrecking Ball Arm, which really is just here to allow Yoshi or Esior to end the game as quickly as possible. You know, a base 7/7 bird that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less is probably going to end the game very, very soon. Very soon. And then the last artifact to note is the Pandorica, which, well, do you like your commander? I don't. Bye. And then we have a pretty solid land package. We're on a couple of legendary lands such as Abstergo and Ouroboros, Iganjo, Flagstones, Minimo, because it untaps a legendary creature. And then our sideboard is mostly to deal with unconventional strategies that would interrupt what we're trying to do. And since we're an aggro deck, that essentially just means we want to mess with control decks and stop combo decks from doing all that. Too much. So we're on Stony Silence, we're on Circle of Confinement, we're on Stone of Arok, Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Like, we're very much here to remove permanents that if we can't counter, then we will just have to suspend away or exile out of the grave. Because graveyard strategies can get around us, and so can a lot of artifact and enchantment strategies. So keep that in mind when playing this deck. But I'm a big fan of Bird Dog. I'm a big fan of Yoshi in general. I think he's one of the best partners in this format just because there's so many small legendary creatures or legendary permanents, I'm sorry. He doesn't just say legendary creatures. It's any legendary permanent entering the battlefield triggers him, which makes him a great partner. And this one is Bird Dog, or as we call it now, barking up the wrong tree. Thank you. I would love to hear if you have any suggestions, comments, concerns about the deck, and what's your favorite commander with Yoshimaru? Honestly, I would love to hear more combinations to try out in the future. On that note, I think you were actually barking up the right tree this time. Catch you later.